I've been an athlete for as long as I can remember, and the game has taken me places I've never would have expected. I've been out here in the DC area playing sports since I was a child, but I've been traveling all across this country. I've been to cities like Atlanta, New York, Seattle, Dallas, Texas. I've been all across the country to play sports. I've met commissioners. I've met Rob Manfred and higher ups in the NFL and the MLB. I've met pro athletes, most notably C.J. Abrams, James Wood, Josh Bell, Terry McLaurin, Ryan Robson Jr. I've met younger athletes my age across this country who are going to be on our screens playing in the big leagues one day. And honestly, it's been a wild ride. Me personally, I've broken school records, I've had success, and I've made memories that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. And at the same time, though, as I got older, something started to change. I started noticing that people's voices were not being heard. And a lot of times, athletes are told to stay in their lane, to just play the game and not speak on anything else that may bother their community. And that never really sat right with me. Because if you have a problem and you have a platform to address the problem, shouldn't you say something? I think yes. And that started to make me really think about another question. What is the role of an athlete? And what does it even mean to be an athlete? Is it just about performance and stats? Or is it about what you stand for when the game is over? And that is where this project came from. And so in this project, I've created a series of jersey patches that represent athletes who chose to speak up even when it was not easy, even when it came with consequences. And these are not just sketches or designs, these are jersey patch that represents a real story, a real moment where sports and real world issues collide. In sports, patches represent history, championships, memorials, and moments. So I use that same idea to represent moments where athletes use their voice. And each pack connects three things: the athlete, the issue they spoke on, and the design that it represents. For Aziz Al Shair, the focus was on global violence and innocent lives being lost. He has spoken out on these issues when many athletes stay silent. That is why I made the message "Stop the Genocide" the center of the patch. And the football keeps it connected to the game, but the message pushes you to think beyond it. And for those who don't know, Aziz Al Shahir was wearing a tape on his nose, as you can see in the picture, and he got fined $11,000 for it. For Enes Cancer Freedom, the issue is oppression and the lack of freedom. He has spoken out against government and human rights violations, even when it affected his career. The broken chains in the design represent control and the fight to break free. For Marcus Rashford, the issue was child food poverty. During the pandemic, many kids lost access to school meals, and he pushed the government to provide food for those children. And that is why I used a plate and utensils and an apple to represent this issue, because this issue is very simple, that all people, no matter your creed, need to eat. Everyone needs to eat. For Maya Moore, the issue was wrongful conviction. Maya Moore was a WNBA player, very successful, and she stepped away from basketball to help a free man who was imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. And so with this design, the keyhole represents unlocking justice and giving someone their freedom back. For Naomi Osaka, the issue was police brutality and racial injustice. She wore masks with the names of victims during matches. You can see George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin, Elijah McClain, and Breonna Taylor, and a bunch of others. So my process through this was to focus on the names because it represents visibility and remembrance of these people who have been slain by police brutality. For Colin Kaepernick, the issue was police brutality as well and systemic racism. He took a knee during the national anthem to protest injustice and was kind of the spark of this take a knee protest. And that decision costed his entire career. He was essentially casted out by the entire NFL owners, as well as he was defamed by President Trump, and he was just called unpatriotic, un-American, and should not be a figure worth looking up to. And the kneeling in general just costed him his life. And so what I was doing was, because he's a Nike athlete, Nike affiliated athlete, I put just do it on the bottom, and the kneeling figure over the map shows that this is like a nationwide issue, and it's not just a issue he should only deal with it. For Muhammad Ali, the issue was the Vietnam War and racial inequality. He refused to be drafted because he did not believe in the war, and he lost his title because of that decision, and he was also arrested for that decision. So the gloves represent both boxing and him standing firm in his beliefs, and through the colors of the green, the war colors, and also using the chains to represent that, like he's trying to break free from like a system of putting people in war for no reason. For Son Heung-min, the focus is global representation and unity. He represents breaking barriers and bringing different cultures into sports. He also works with the United Nations World Food Program to provide all people food. And this design reflects like balance, essentially, and kind of like global influence. For Lewis Hamilton and Bubba Wallace, the issue is diversity and Black Lives Matter. Both of these athletes have pushed for more representation in a sport that lacks a lot of diversity. And so the checker flag connects to racing, and the race fist connects to activism. For Carl Nassib, the issue is identity and representation. He became the first active NFL player to come out publicly as LGBTQ. And the design represents confidence and being true to yourself, and pushing outside of the norm, the standards. For John Carlos and Tommy Smith, the issue was racial inequality. They raised their fists on the Olympic podium to protest injustice during the 1968 Olympics. This was a time during civil rights, the civil rights movement. Towards the end of it, we still had the Detroit riots, and you still had a lot of other movements being pushed by Malcolm X and other leaders. And this moment particularly was one of the most influential moments and kind of started the activism within sports. For Jaylen Brown, the focus is education. Jaylen Brown is an athlete who is very smart. He was dubbed, quote unquote, too smart to even be an NBA player, and his skill was questioned because he was so focused on his academics. But the book design represents learning and growth, while also playing basketball, being a scholar athlete. This patch represents many figures and leadership beyond sports, and it shows how it can extend to communities, policy, and it shows how it's a big patriotic value in our country that kind of gets out. That kind of doesn't really get talked about until we get into the Olympics or something tragic happens, like as you see the other three pictures, other than Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes is this guy right here. Yeah. For Pat Tillman, the issue connects to service and truth. Pat Tillman left the NFL to join the military, and he passed away from a friendly fire, unfortunately. But his story also raises question about how truth is presented, because this war, this Afghanistan war is over, but this war was essentially, we can now say it was a useless war. And so it just raises the question about how the truth is reflected and how this design reflects both complexity, honor, and just in general peace, as well as the silhouette figures representing people who serve in the military that get unnoticed for their sacrifice. For Megan Rapinoe's, the issue is equality and women's rights and equal pay. Megan Rapinoe used her platform to go on talk shows, to go on news shows, being a guest, and just spreading the word about how they get so unpaid, even though the women's national team for soccer won gold a lot of times, and they don't really get paid like the men, even though they are so much better competitively and so much more successful than the men. And it just shows how the lightning bolt in this design kind of represents the energy and the fire she kind of had towards pushing for change. And I use the colors purple and pink because of her hair, but also because those are it represents women. That's what I thought, at least. For Curt Flood, the issue was players' rights in baseball, and so Curt Flood challenged the system that controlled players could play, and that helped lead to free agency. Curt Flood was a player who wanted to, didn't want to be controlled where he had to play, and he wanted to be free. And this design connects baseball with financial freedom. For Jackie Robinson, also Roberto Clemente, but mainly Jackie Robinson, the issue is equality. Jackie Robinson, as we all know, for those who don't know, broke the color barrier in baseball. And Roberto Clemente, not pictured here, but he used his platform to help others and speak out, especially for the Latino community. And the word equality connects both of their legacies. For Vinicius Jr., the issue is racism in modern sports. He has spoken out after facing repeated abuse, and the racist represents standing up and refusing to stay silent for all people of color. For LeBron James, the focus is being more than just an athlete. LeBron James, for those who don't know, he's been criticized by mainly conservative, mainly not even conservative, really just Fox News and Donald Trump for using his platform to speak on issues and to support his community. A lot of people tell him just keep dribbling and stop talking about politics. Keep dribbling, and so the crown and the message represents leadership and influence. Also, the crown is just his name is King James, so I just put the crown. I use the purple colors, and I just put the more than athlete to represent who LeBron James is and his legacy off the court. For Simone Biles, the issue is mental health. She stepped away from competition to protect herself as she was dealing with a bunch of mental health complications, and that showed strength. And that strength is not just something that is physical. So the flame represents pressure, strength, and resilience, and the curved road represents the hard trials that you will face leading up to the top. So when you're climbing to the top, you're always going to face some adversity. So that's why I kind of had the curved road. And that is it for the end of my jersey patch design showcase. And just to note, at the end of these designs, I realized something pretty important to me. That being an athlete is not just about what you do in the game. It's about what you stand for outside of it. A lot of people think athletes should stay in a box. They should stay, focus on their sport and not focus on what's surrounding them. But at the end of the day, we're all still humans, and especially with these athletes who have such a significant amount of influence and they have platforms that they can speak on, use it. And even for athletes that are in high school, athletes that are maybe in college, and that may not have as big of a platform as a professional athlete, you can still use your platform to speak up, speak out, whether you're still in school, wherever you are in your community. Just use your voice and stand for something, because your voice matters just as much as your performance does.